Kenyan President William Ruto, of course, giving his address at the Kololo grounds as Uganda celebrates its 60th independence. He spoke about the AFCFTA and, of course, the EAC and the need for a lot of work to be done to improve on the economy in East Africa there. We're, of course, continuing the conversation now to talk about the rule of law and freedom of expression and assembly in Uganda as it turns 60. And, of course, we have two people joining us, both of them. First of all, Dismas Nkunda, CEO, Atrocities Watch, Kampala, Uganda. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Nkunda.
Good afternoon. I don't know whether it's good morning for you in Nigeria.
Oh, well, it's going to be good afternoon in a bit. For us here, but thanks for joining us. We also have Gilbert Sendugwa, who's the Executive Director, Africa Freedom of Information Center in Uganda also. Thanks for joining us, and good afternoon at your end.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. And warm greetings from Uganda. Yeah. And thank you for celebrating with us this 60th independence anniversary.
Thank you so much. So let's begin the conversation of rule of law and freedom of expression going on in Uganda. And I'll begin with you, Dismas. Unfortunately, let's even go back, way back to the time of Idi Amin and Milton Obote and what we're seeing right now with Yoweri Museveni. How would you rate the freedom of expression? Because if you look at the last elections, even if we go forward, in 2021, which is a very typical example after Yoweri Museveni has ruled for so many years, a lot of people still complained about the opposition to freedom of expression and even the clamp down on opposition parties. What's your take on that?
Thank you very much. I think that the important thing, the comparisons are not very easy to make because each one had its own challenges. The current challenges that we have with Museveni being in power for 36 years is that he has, over time, I think that's the bit of being in power for a long time, is that there has been a decline in the freedoms of expression that people have, in particular when we come to the opposition political parties. Those ones who the Museveni sees as people challenging his power. So you'll have like opposition figures, Dr. Kizza Besigye, Bobi Wine, and others who are denied certain basic rights, given that they are challenging the position of the president. So Idi Amin had his own challenges, of course, because of the nature of the politics at the time. But I do believe that Museveni hasn't done us any favor in terms of the clampdown that he has exacted on people of Uganda to deny them the rights of freedom, irrespective of the fact that they are easily and very well articulated into the 1995 Constitution, which he helped formulate.
Well, Gilbert, you know, let's bring you in here. And I want to ask, is Uganda truly and in its entirety, you know, living in and practicing a full democracy, you know, as it stands? I think you need to unmute your device.
Unmute.
All right.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Yeah, when you look at Uganda's constitution, especially the Bill of Rights, and more so focusing on the rights to freedom of assembly, expression, association, and information, and try to also relate with the situation in the country, you'll find that the aspiration of the framers of the Constitution and the reality seem to be on a different page. I was in church today, and the service was about celebrating Uganda's 60 years of independence. But the mood in the church, the mood in people's life and faces did not seem to appear one of celebration. And some of the things that touched to that is that, yes, increasingly, yes, we had a new constitution in 1995, And this was intended to cure most of the ills that the new government that had come in, had come to address. The ability for people to be able to express themselves on how they are governed, and the leaders to be able to respond in an accountable way. Now, that seems to be in a different space now. For example, as we speak, online expression is challenged with new registrations, with frequent internet shutdowns, surveillance, and other challenges. And Uganda has one of the most young populations. So to the extent that these young people are not able to freely express themselves, either because they fear or because there are legal challenges, is a problem. Also associated with that is the space for civic groups to operate is also quite challenging. So to answer your question in short, the question that you have posed, that is Uganda now fully democratic? You say that yes, there has been some progress in terms of people being able to, express themselves in choosing, especially local leaders, through a regular vote. But there is a lot of room that needs to be traveled. Also, even within those, you find that when people are choosing leaders, they are really not informed about whom they are choosing and why they are choosing. And these are very fundamental questions for a democratic society.
Okay, Gilbert, I'll continue with you because you are the Executive Director, Africa Freedom of Information Center. And earlier on, you talked about the restriction of media coverage. Even during the 2021 elections, a lot of internet shut down, we saw, and there was no free access of information. What has been done about this? Because it's one thing to complain, but what are Ugandans, what is the Freedom of Information Center doing about this?
Yes, we have been engaging the government and all stakeholders in this regard, consistent with the UN Security Council position that all rights that citizens enjoy offline must be enjoyed online. So apart from the studies and monitoring that we have done, and evidence of which we have used to engage various stakeholders in government and otherwise, we have also been sensitizing citizens about their rights, about how to exercise it lawfully, to understand that constitutional rights really in practice is you have to claim and use them, not just wait that they find you where you are. So that is some of the things that we have been doing. Using various mechanisms and approaches to ensure that that is done. The other thing that we have done in this context is we have, in the previous elections of last year, we did monitoring of electoral violence. And based on the information that we got, again, engaged various duty bearers to be able to hold accountable the perpetrators of violence. Because then if that doesn't happen, it means that impunity, a culture of impunity is going to reign. And we think that this is going to be very, very important in continuing to build a strong foundation for democracy. There cannot be democracy without accountability.
Absolutely not. Dismas Nkunda, you are the CEO, Atrocities Watch. I want you to share your views on Uganda today with regards human rights abuses and the respect for the rule of law, and of course the respect for citizens' rights. We've seen numerous situations where Bobby Wine, along with his supporters, have been abused physically and whatnot. There's also been reports, of numerous rights abuses in Uganda. So I want you to share your thoughts on that one. And at the same time, also speak on civil society organizations. Do they exist? Are they given a space to thrive in Uganda of today?
Thank you. Let me begin with the last question about the civic space. The civic space, like my brother Gilbert was elaborating, is that there has been a continued purge towards institutions and organizations that have worked on expanding the civic space in the country. There has been raids in various NGOs that work on particular political spaces that they try to advocate for, educating the citizens about their right to vote, the right to, to the right choice of a person they want to become their leader. And so others have been frozen. I think it's about 1 year and a half in which about 54 non-governmental organizations were registered, and many of them without any due process, some of them with the false information that was used by the Uganda National Board of NGO Bureau. And so that has continued. There have been raids in offices in which equipment is stolen. There are cases before police in which NGOs have been, getting individuals or even knowing who has raided their offices, but there's no action that has been taken. So, yes, the civic space of NGOs in Uganda has severely been dented over a period of time. As to the comparison, like I was saying, there has been some, excuse me, there has been some progress.
All right.
Initially,
Dismas Nkunda, apologies. Would like to, just ask you to hold that thought. We want to speak, or we want to get a live feed from President Yoweri Museveni as he addresses the nation in a bit. But of course, once he gets there, we would like to bring you in, and of course, so you can respond to that. But let's also take a live feed from the Kololo grounds and show our viewers what's currently going on over there.
Thank you again, Your Excellency, for your wise contribution to establish peace in the region. We Burundian people and East African people, we boast of having you as a sage of the region. Your Excellency, in this high symbolic commemoration, my dearest wish is to see a reintegrated East Africa and a united Africa. And this can only be reached when we are economically, culturally, politically independent and stable. It is high time we strengthen our regional integration and build a more prosperous and a powerful East African community having one market and one voice. This is our ultimate goal as East African, realizing the political federation. That is the reason why I commend and congratulate regional companies that have already opened branches in Burundi and encourage others to do the same. Our community is one of the most successful in Africa, and it is my sincere hope that our success will inspire other similar regional settings. Excellence, I would not finish my remark without saying a word about the commendable job we are doing to bring peace and stability in the east of Democratic Republic of Congo. I recently had a meeting with the United Nations Secretary General on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, and he assured me of his full support of the Nairobi initiative. He asked me to personally tell you, together with the head of states of the East African Community member states, that he is proud of your work. He wishes you every success which will bring about the reduction of MONUSCO numbers while strengthening the East African force at the same time. For the sake of peace, Nothing should stand on our way towards bringing security to the people of DRC and stabilizing the region. Once again, Your Excellency, I congratulate you. Fe abarundi tubagala nyonyo. Katonda abawe emikasa nemilembe. Asante sana. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Murakoze cyane.
All right, it's still a special broadcast celebrating Uganda at 60, and that was Burundian President Evariste Ndayishimiye giving words of advice and, of course, talk from the UN Security Council on the interdependence of Africa, which is actually the theme of this year's Uganda at 60, which is a declaration of African interdependence and our shared destiny. And we've been talking about the economy. Earlier on, we had William Ruto come up to talk about breaking down the borders and the boundaries, yes, the AfCFTA, which you talked about, the African Free Continental Trade, you know, and all this to make Africa more interdependent, especially in a situation where we have the Russia-Ukraine crisis going on and so many global pandemics going on. There is a need for African countries to come together.
To wake up,
yeah,
basically. And of course, you also spoke about the EAC also, but we're still speaking about the rule of law, freedom of expression and assembly, and we have two people that had joined us earlier, Dismas Nkunda, CEO, Atrocities Watch in Kampala, Uganda, and also Gilbert Sendugwa, who is Executive Director, Africa Freedom of Information Center in Uganda. Of course, we will once again apologize to both our guests, you know, for not letting them have their full, you know, speeches. But of course, we have to listen to the president of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, now, as of course addresses us and of course the rest of Africa at the Kololo grounds there.
His Excellency President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the President of the Republic of Uganda, heads of states and governments, respected dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and a pleasure to be here with you all to celebrate with you the independence of the beautiful and rich land of Uganda and its people. Uganda is a land blessed with human capital, natural resources, and a spirit of success which radiates from the people of Uganda. In this regard, I, on behalf of myself and the Somali government and its people, sincerely congratulate the government and the people of Uganda on the hard-won 60th independence anniversary. Since independence, Somalia and Uganda have been strong allies with a shared agenda and ambition for sustainable development. Our two nations not only share a rich history, but a future of common opportunities which we are determined to benefit from the betterment of our two peoples. Our partnership for progress started before the independence of our two nations. Somalia stood by Uganda's independence, and these bonds of friendship broadly continued after the struggle of the independence. Today, Somalia and Uganda face a common enemy in international terrorism. On the security front, Somalia and Uganda and all other troop-contributing countries are laying the foundation for a secure, progressive, and prosperous Somalia and the wider region by actively supporting our government's effort to annihilate al-Shabaab once and for all. We are grateful to Uganda for training many of our brave security forces who are on the front line in the fight against international terrorism as we are attending this great opportunity this day, this hour. Mr. President, I would like to take this opportunity to express our nation's gratitude for the noble sacrifices of young men and women from Uganda and other troop-contributing countries in our joint fight against international terrorism. We Somalis are deeply conscious of your country's relentless contribution towards our peace building and commemorate those sacrifices with our commitment to peace and prosperous future for generations to come in Somalia. Since the independence, Uganda has come a very long way under the able leadership of President Yoweri Museveni, who has dedicated his life to ensuring the progress of Uganda and its citizens. This is an exemplary step taken towards a nation building. Today, both the government and the people of Uganda are on the right path to sustainable development, and they must be proud of this as we are all with them. In this auspicious day, we look forward to continuing our partnership and cooperation. I wish the Ugandan government and its people even greater success and development in the future to come. I say all, Happy Independence Day to all Ugandans. I thank you.
And of course, still getting live feed from the Kololo grounds in Uganda, where you just saw the president of Somalia there speaking and addressing the, the audience. It's looking like it's going to be a very long day, with all African or those African presidents that are present there, of course, coming to also share their commemorations and their, goodwill to the people of Uganda. There, we of course had heard from the president of Burundi, Evariste Ndayishimiye, and of course President William Ruto of Kenya, both speaking about a united East African region, and of course, opening up, these countries to each other to ensure that they're able to do business and trade, and also fight the security challenges that they have with the likes of our Shabab. Rita, of course, these the security challenges are, they are across the, the continent. A lot of countries have had to deal with it, even in West Africa. But of course, East African countries, Kenya has had a serious issue with Al-Shabaab for a really, really long time. Yeah. And so these are very, very important conversations that need to be had between these countries in East Africa. How do they completely put an end to terrorism and to all sorts of insecurity challenges that they've had?
Those questions are very important, especially when the Burundian president there talked about commitment to peace. And even the Somalia president, Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, he also talked about commitment to peace and the effort that the president, Yoweri Museveni, has put into making sure that security architecture and apparatus in the East African community, they all work together to ensure that this Al-Shabaab and Al-Qaeda terrorist groups do not resurface in all these countries. But another question is, because the theme is a declaration of African interdependence. When we talk about interdependence, yes, we want economic growth, we want security of lives and properties, but what about the management of governance and politics? I mean, from our guests, we looked at governance and political transformation. We looked at how the leaders have actually led the people, and so far so good. It's not been a very smooth ride. What have they done to make sure that, okay, you caution this person and make sure that this person does the right thing for the people? Because one of our guests said political instability has affected Uganda from growing, and that's why you don't have investors or investment into the country. So do they just work around themselves, or they're actually doing it for the good of the people?
You know, and of course, statements are easy to make, you know, and of course there's political statements that will be made at events like this, you know, but implementation, right after, you know, everyone leaves the stadium today or leave Kololo grounds today and goes home, you know, how much of these things are going to be implemented. We still have our guests with us, you know, and I'll just quickly also say to Dismas Nkunda, who's the CEO of Atrocities Watch, and of course Gilbert Sendugwa. We, of course, will be bringing you in intermittently to speak. I think, you know, I can quickly also just, you know, give Gilbert, you know, some time to share his thoughts on the events so far. When you see things like this, you know, from presidents of Burundi and Kenya and Somalia, and of course, you know, the statements that they are making with regards to United East Africa, how does this make you feel, you know, with regards to regional growth? Gilbert Sendugwa, let's have you speak on that.
Yes, thank you very much. And indeed, I think it was His Excellency the President of Somalia who has rightly reported that this region has, and also President Ruto, that this region has enormous potential for success and growth, and that if harnessed quite well, it can actually be an engine for success for the whole continent. Now, the other point I want to make from what has been said by His Excellencies, clearly His Excellency President Museveni is a man of high influence, as you have heard from the leaders that have spoken. And therefore, on the issue that we are talking about, rule of law, freedom of expression and assembly, if this could become, you know, a top priority for President Museveni, then you could say that the region could make progress also on these fronts, based on the high influence that, you know, he has, not just in Uganda, but also in other countries, as we have heard from the leaders. The other point that is being made by His Excellencies is that, you know, all of them are talking about economic freedoms, freedom of movement, freedom of goods, freedom of people. Most people, I think they have not actually talked about too much the freedom of people, but they emphasize the freedom of movement and also prosperity. Now the question is, how do you achieve these economic freedoms when actually social and political freedoms are constrained? I think it's going to be very, very difficult for people to, you know, have these freedoms, to enjoy these opportunities and prosperity when they are not free to express themselves, when they are not free to enjoy themselves. So I would say that as a region, as a people, as leaders, there's a need to agree and say that, you know, economic freedoms are important, but they cannot be in isolation. They have to go together with the political and social freedoms and rights, and that is going to be very critical for sustainability. Now, as we speak, when you look, for example, to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, all these countries have signed the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. They have ratified it. But all of them are not respecting it in terms of reporting. Uganda, for example, is led by 5 countries. Those are 10 years, it has not submitted a report. The treaty says that every state party is supposed to submit a report every 2 years on measures that they are taking to implement and promote and protect rights protected by the Charter. Now, the fact that Uganda and all these countries are not respecting that is a major area of concern. Because when we are talking about integration, the instruments and mechanisms of the African Union are very, very critical on that agenda. And we cannot say that we are going to, make progress on the economic through the free trade agreement, African Free Trade Agreement, when in fact we are violating the other rights, the other frameworks and instruments of the African Union. So we have to look at them all together and have the aspirations of the African Union experienced in the ordinary people's life in each of the member countries.
A lot of things there, and of course we're looking at the ills of the community and how our other African countries will help solve this. Now I'll go to you, Dismas. Still looking at this African interdependence, which has been the theme and which all the presidents have talked about, the Burundian president, Kenyan president, and even Somalia president. How do you think this can be achievable? Because aside all that, we still look at the gains of African countries being each other's brothers. So how can we achieve that?
Well, thank you. The achievement of integration, I think integration is not just a process, but it's also about the mindset of the people that you are integrating. Integration, what has happened is that it has been at a superficial level. In other words, at the heads of state level, they speak about integration, they speak about bringing now East Africa community is almost possibly one of the biggest now as compared to ECOWAS, because in addition to Democratic Republic of Congo, which joins the East African community, bringing in an additional 90 million people and making the East African community touch both the Atlantic Ocean and the Indian Ocean with a total population of over 300 million people. That is a very good sign that the East African community is certainly coming up to age. But the point is, isn't integration supposed to be between communities that live side by side? Now, if you look, for example, Uganda has a boundary, Uganda has neighbors. It has South Sudan, it has Kenya, it has Tanzania, it has Rwanda, it has Democratic Republic of Congo. But the communities that live along the borders, they are already integrated in a different manner without any officialism that was involved in bringing them together. I come from the border between Uganda and Democratic Republic of Congo. My home is 5 kilometers to the Congo border and 8 kilometers to the Rwanda border. But the population there, the manner in which they live, is that for them, they're already integrated without the officialism of the government. So the idea of integration at the top without involving the ordinary people in the integration process is possibly one of the failures that is going to make the entire process very feasible. If it was done the right way, it's certainly very good. It's good for trade. People can now have freedom of movement, freedom of residence. We shouldn't be having Burundian refugees in Uganda, for example, because under the East African Protocol, they have freedom of residence in the country called Uganda. But they're still tagged refugees, even when they are living in Uganda. And it happens to other countries that have individuals who are living in the country. So integration is a very good idea, but it should be a pro-people integration, not a heads of states integration.
There's so much work that needs to be done, obviously, and this, is, in different spectrums. The economy, with regard to security, which of course is still an ongoing battle.
Yeah.
The rule of law and of course growth of the whole of the East African region. But today the focus is on Uganda, and I'd like to thank you both, Dismas Nkunda, CEO Atrocities Watch, and Gilbert Sendugwa, who's Executive Director, Africa Freedom of Information Center, also in Uganda. Thank you both for coming around. There's so much, of course, that will happen in the country of Uganda today, and we hope that we can bring you in sometime during the week, of course, for updates on Uganda at 60. Thank you so much once again for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a blessed afternoon.
And you too.
And as you rightly said, the celebration still continues, and we at News Center TV will still be giving you live feeds, live updates of the Kololo Ground Independence celebrations. And of course, we'll also be looking at analysis and all that is needed to have a better Africa, interdependent Africa, and of course a better Uganda. 60 years of independence is no joke. We need to see the gains of being an independent country so far. So right now we'll be leaving you with live feeds at Kololo ground. We still have the President Yoweri Museveni talking to the people, and we also have presidents. Also, we have the Salva Kiir. About 5 African presidents so far have been present at the independence anniversary. So right now we'll leave you with live feeds going on at Kololo ground, where the Independence Day celebration in Uganda is ongoing.
Il est temps pour le président de la République démocratique du Congo de construire un nouveau monde, de construire une paix durable qui va permettre le décollage de notre région, de nos pays respectifs, qui va permettre à ce que nous puissions léguer à nos enfants une région de paix avec des opportunités de développement et d'émergence.
It is now time for the government of the Democratic Republic of Congo to fix what has gone wrong so that even our children in future find a stable region.
Il a aussi transmis donc un message de fraternité parce que nos pays sont condamnés à vivre ensemble.
He has also sent me to tell you that the message he sent is a message of brotherhood because our countries have been condemned to work together, to live together.
Voisins, nous l'étions hier, voisins, nous le sommes aujourd'hui, voisins, nous le resterons éternellement.
We were neighbors in the past, we are neighbors today, and we shall remain neighbors in the future.
Tout ce qui touche la RDC.
What affects Uganda affects the Democratic Republic of Congo. What affects the Democratic Republic of Congo affects Uganda. We have a lot to share in this region, in this geographical area.
À l'occasion de cette célébration, nous souhaitons profiter de la grande expérience d'un homme qui a tout vécu, qui maîtrise l'histoire de notre région et qui donc a la responsabilité de veiller à ce que nos enfants, nos arrière-petits-enfants puissent vivre demain dans un monde de paix. Parce que la plus grande bataille qui nous reste à mener, c'est sans nul doute la bataille pour l'avènement d'une paix durable et fraternelle.
On this 60th independence occasion, we should take advantage of the great experience of someone in this region who knows the history very well, and that history is supposed to guide us to ensure that our children and grandchildren live in peace, and that this peace should be sustainable.
C'est donc en agissant ensemble, dans la fraternité, dans la sincérité, que nous réussirons à réconcilier nos différents peuples avec l'avenir et l'espoir d'une vie meilleure.
It is through working together in the spirit of brotherhood that we will succeed to ensure that our children find sustainable peace.
Que vive la République de l'Ouganda. Que
Long-
vive le peuple de l'Ouganda.
Long live the people of Uganda,
Et que Dieu bénisse à jamais notre continent et notre région. Je dis et je vous remercie.
and may God bless our country, may God bless our region, may God bless us all. I thank you for listening to me.
Excellencies, heads of state and heads of delegation who have been introduced from the brotherly countries of the East African community and from other friendly countries, Their Excellencies, the First Ladies, Her Excellency Vice President of Uganda, Right Honorable Speaker, His Lordship Chief Justice, the Right Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Ministers, Members of Parliament, Secretary General of the NRM Party, members of the Diplomatic Corps, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I thank their excellencies, the heads of state, for agreeing to come and share with us this joyous occasion in spite of their busy schedule. I also thank the brother countries that sent delegations. Secondly, I congratulate all Ugandans on this occasion of the 60th anniversary of Uganda's independence. It has been quite an eventful 60 years. Naye abaganda tugamba nti ekitata muyima tekimalako nte. If a muhima does not die, even if the cattle die, you will always get new cattle. In spite of the numerous problems over these 60 years, Uganda is now standing and marching forward. It is not only Uganda that faced problems. So did many African countries, as the president of Burundi was telling you. That is why, on this occasion, I would like to ask the African political class the following two questions. The two historical questions are, number one, are there professors of economics in Africa? Mbuza, waliwo abasoma ebya enyingiza y'amawanga? That is question number one. Are there professors of economics in Africa? Second question, is the African political class determined to build a Latin America in Africa instead of building the United States of Africa in Africa. This generation, 60 years, what are we building? Are we building a Latin America in Africa or a United States of Africa in Africa? And I'm glad many of the leaders have spoken already on this very issue. They have all spoken on it, the ones who are here. Even by the time we defeated Idi Amin in 1979, our thinking on the philosophical, ideological, and strategic issues was well crystallized. Philosophy tries to understand man and his motivations. Ideology deals with the ideas about the management of society, and strategy deals with the methods used to implement whatever plans you have for society. On the side of philosophy, we had, by that time, by the time we defeated Idi Amin, we had discovered that while there may be some altruistic actors in society, the majority of the people were egocentric. Hence, the wisdom of using the private sector in the economy without banishing completely the use of the parastatals. On the side of ideology, we discovered that in order to create prosperity for our people through the production and sale of goods and services, we need to emphasize the 4 principles. And these are the principles of patriotism, loving Uganda, Pan-Africanism, loving Africa, socio-economic transformation, and democracy. In order to use our understanding of philosophy and our ideology to create prosperity for our people, we evolved a strategy of 10 points program. Point number 5 of that program read as follows, in quotes, building an independent, integrated, and self-sustaining national economy, end of quotes. By that time, we had already discovered that one of Africa's problems has been the curse of confining itself to the export of raw materials, where we always get less than 10% of the actual value of the end product out of those raw materials, and the resultant loss of jobs to the cleverer, led outsiders. The outsiders are better led. They take our raw materials, they get more money out of them, and create jobs for their children, when ours are here dying in the ocean trying to go to Europe. The external parasite groups are always interested in perpetuating that hemorrhage of resources and development energies from Africa to other places. What is most infuriating, however, are the comprador bourgeoisie, agents of foreign interests in Africa, who do 2 things. First of all, they oppose our value addition efforts so as to frustrate our industrialization efforts. Secondly, they are always importing everything from outside, including trivialities like dead people's hair. It is these processes that have stunted Africa's growth. It is a scandal if there were people to recognize real scandals. You hear people talking of scandals, but they are talking about small scandals. This is a mega centuries-old scandal, which I don't hear anybody talking about, many people talking about. The global value for trade in coffee is US dollars 460 billion. The coffee growing countries of the whole world get only 25 billion US dollars. And wonderful Africa gets only $2.5 billion from a figure of $460 billion. This is coffee. And much of this $2.5 billion, which is coming to Africa because of coffee, is now going to Uganda, because Uganda is taking $800 million of that. Although we are producing a lot of coffee, 8 million bags, but you hear we are still getting only $800 million out of the $2.5 billion that Africa shares from a figure of 460 billion. So you are getting very little money from coffee. How about automobiles, vehicles? The global automobile business is US dollars 2.86 trillion. Obutabalika bubiri kumpi busatu. Africa's share in the manufacture of vehicles is only $30 billion out of 2.86 trillion. And I think this goes to maybe South Africa or something like that. The global pharmaceutical business is US dollars 1.42 trillion. Africa's share is US dollars 16 billion. The global business for furniture, entebe zokutulako. Oh, banana. Is US dollars 654 billion. Africa's share is 4.86 billion. Not even 10%. Not even 10%. The global business for textiles is US dollars 1 trillion. Africa's share is US dollars 31 billion. The global business of cereals, kasori, bichebi byonna, maize and all that, 1.3 trillion. Africa's share, 275 billion. The global business for milk is US dollars 308 billion. Africa's share is US dollars 18 billion. The global business for fruits is US dollars 6 to 22 billion. Africa's share, 56 billion. The global business for electronics is 1 trillion. Africa's share is 82 billion. The global business for electrical equipment is 1.5 trillion. Africa's share is 120 billion. The global business for beef, enyama, is US dollars 414 billion. Africa's share, 300 million. Not even 1 billion. Enyama, zente, zabanyankole bamwe bawano. abaganda nabagamba nti nabo waliwo ente enganda naziwulirako. The global business for fish, 544 billion. Africa's share, 46 billion. It is this that prompts me to ask the question, are there professors of economics in Africa? Of course, it should be the political leaders that should evolve policies about these issues. The question, however, is, if the political actors do not see this hemorrhage, why should the academicians not see it? Are they not supposed to scan the global system so as to what is going on, where and why? Are professors and academicians not supposed to use their knowledge to see what is good or bad for their people? It is a tragedy, I'm telling you. Here in Uganda, we have had to fight the neo-colonial politicians, civil servants, parasitic importing merchants on account of this hemorrhage. Omulimo gwa Africa kusaka. Buli kintu kyonna kya kusaka. Entebe za kusaka. Entebe z'okutuulako. Bagenda ne basaka entebe Dubai. Dubai eddungu ery'omusenyu likola entebe ffe abali mu kibira wano gye tusaka. So we have been through struggle, we have caused vertical integration in some sectors outlined below. Because when we came from the bush, we were clear, we told you, point number 5, build an economy which is independent, integrated, and self-sustaining, exactly solving this problem. But war here within Uganda, opposed by external forces and by internal groups. But still we have moved. On maize, we have moved. We have been able to produce kawunga because we used to get kawunga from Kenya. There was no kawunga here, no maize flour. Animal feeds, and we are targeting starch and ethanol. Milk we have succeeded. Processed liquid milk, ghee, butter, powdered milk, casein proteins, cheese, yogurt. Cotton, textiles, vegetable oil, animal feeds, gunpowder. Africans don't know that gunpowder comes from cotton. Even the scientists at Namronge, where they grow cotton, I asked them, do you know that gunpowder comes from cotton? They didn't know. African market is flooded by dead people's clothes. M30 from the USA and Europe, known as second-hand clothes, thereby exporting money and jobs. Sugarcane, we have been able to produce raw sugar, industrial sugar, ethanol, rum, animal feeds, and electricity. Beef, cattle, we have been able to produce beef, at least we don't import beef. And now we are beginning to produce leather. The other day I opened a leather factory. Fish, we have got 14 factories producing fish fillet. The Nile Perch Mall is being developed as a big export. These factories had gone to 22, but some had to close because of the bad fishing of fishing young fish. Bananas. Our scientists have moved on the banana flour, banana starch, banana juice, banana wine, banana gin, eyo mugimanyi ndowooza. Eyo sirina kugyogerako nnyo. Waragi. Waragi oyo bamutegeera bannayuganda. Alcohol sanitizers against corona. Zyatuyamba nnyo. Here we have been having a big war with the political class and the bureaucrats over this banana project. Bananas are good for potassium and carbohydrates, apart from vitamin C in ripe bananas, amenvu. Fruits, fresh fruit exports, fruit juice, teju, we are making teju, teso juice. I gave them this name. They wanted to give it another name. I said, no, you call it teso juice. When you see all these cars which are here, Mitsubishi, I don't know what, Toyota, those are human beings in Japan. So these products of ours should get local names so that we sell our country abroad. So Teju is Teso juice. And the leather of Ruero, I will give it a name of Ruero somewhere. I will sit down and give it a proper name. Fruit pulp, I have not heard whether you are producing jam. That one I have not got very well. Sorghum, Omuemba, we are now using it for brewing beer. Pines, MT, ceiling boards, furniture. Until recently, furniture for Uganda, including government departments, was being imported from China, India, Dubai, etc. Imagine that. Entebbe obutebe, ezo nazo za kusaka. Mama Janet here had to have a big fight in the Ministry of Education, where they were giving tenders to companies in India to supply chairs for schools. And yet we had people here who were making furniture, but they were not being allowed by these wonderful people. Now, gold refinery. We have got a gold refinery. Finally, we are able to fully process gold. But you are not using it. The gold which is processed in Entebbe, you don't use it to make jewelry. You should make jewelry out of that gold. Limestone, cement blocks, pavers, scrap metal, steel bars, mtaimbwa, steel gate doors, used car batteries, recycled batteries, rubber, car and motorcycle tires, PVC plastics, textiles, blankets, palm oil, soap, cooking oil, sesame seeds, cooking oil, soap manufacture, marble tiles, marble. We get marble tiles and sanitary ware. Clay. We are now making industrial ceramics. These were being imported also. You can imagine. Ceramics just for floors of houses were being imported. Until somebody, a Chinese person, so why do you import these tiles? Why not make them here? You've got the best clay here. Granite, pavers, building blocks, tea leaves. There we have got 31 factories, at least, but they need to be improved. These achievements have been in spite of the stiff opposition we have been facing from the parasites and their foreign backers, such as the Monitor newspaper. To take an example, this paper, on the 22nd of May, 2022, it said in quotes, "Coffee deal stinks." That's what they were saying. Nti entegeka zetulina ku mwanyi ziwunya. Bali awo kubanga bw'oyogera omuntu akuli mu maaso kiba kirungi when you talk about somebody who is there, not backbiting him. Coffee deal stinks, but key culprit will not be punished. Key culprit is myself. I am here. I am abundant here. Let me say anankwatako. I am the promoter of the tea, of the coffee value addition. Tewali mulala akirimu Yoweri Museveni. Amanya ga Yoweri Museveni mugamanya amalala. Ebyo katubireke tulina abagenyi wano. In other words, Museveni is committing a crime by trying to add value to the Uganda coffee. Since 1986, I've been trying to get investors to add value to our coffee. On the 12th of November, 1997, I wrote a letter to the Honorable Mayanja Nkangi to complain about the lack of movement on the issue of adding value to coffee. Our farmers, even today, our farmers are paid an equivalent of 70 cents per kilo of low-grade coffee. The same kilogram, when roasted, ground into powder and packaged, it sells for $12.9 in supermarkets. This is the slavery I cannot accept. How can it be that the professors, economics professors of Africa, do not see this? How can it be that the ministries of finance of Africa do not see this? On the 12th of November, 1997, I wrote the following letter to the Honorable Mayanja Nkangi, who was our Minister of Finance at that time. It's a long letter, but maybe you will read it in the paper. But I can read it here. Reference is made to our cabinet meeting of 3rd of November 1997 held in Masaka. In that meeting, I brought to cabinet 3 containers of instant coffee, 1 plastic container with a capacity of 100 grams of blended coffee, Robusta and Arabica, originating from Uganda, but processed abroad, was selling at $14. Just 100 grams, not even a kilo. So this letter was saying that at that time, when we get $1, somebody somewhere from a kilo, somebody somewhere in the world gets $70. That's what I was saying in this letter. You will see it in the document when it is published. After that, I engaged the Nestle group in Davos. This group which has got its label on coffee. They made it clear that they already had their factory for coffee processing in the UK and would not build a new one. Hence, we had to remain as the raw material producers, getting only 5% of the value of the coffee we grow. They, moreover, tried to muddy the water by claiming that blending of the different coffees can only take place in Europe. We told them that Uganda had all the varieties, and the blending would be done here. That has been the war I've been involved in until I got the Vinci company to help me. The one who monitor was the campaigning, was saying that in Ewunya, tugenda kutegeera Awunya, tugenda mpola mpola, tutegeere ani Awunya. Arwana ku Uganda oba kati gye tulindako. You heard how some of the MPs were talking in that war. Mwalimu Julius Nyerere had built a coffee processing factory in Bukoba, in Tanzania, near the border of Uganda. When I heard of that, I linked our people with that effort. They were producing an end product known as Star Coffee. Unknown to me, the officials of Uganda allowed that effort to die out, or get stunted. What blindness and betrayal this is. I don't even know what is happening to that factory, the one in Bukoba, because my people pulled away without telling me. To add to the story of coffee, there's the story of iron ore. Uganda has got the purest iron ore of Tare in the world, 70% pure. The nearest is the one of Peru, which is 58% pure. An Indian company, working with some locals, had planned to export this high-grade raw material to India and to be paid US dollars 47 per ton. Out of 1,000 kilograms of this iron ore, when you process it, you get 700 kilograms of steel. A ton of steel at that time was selling at US dollars 550. So you can imagine, here, you Ugandans, you get $47. Somebody goes and gets 550 from your iron ore here. Today, a ton of steel is US dollars 700. I stopped that theft. If I had not stopped that theft, it would have meant that Uganda would be donating money and jobs to the outsiders and would be losing its natural resources and remain perpetually underdeveloped. I cannot be part of this. We have now finally got investors that are ready to build a vertically integrated steel industry that will produce high-grade products that we need for hydropower dams, for high-rise buildings, for the standard gauge railway, and for our automobile and military industries. Each year, Uganda spends US dollars 362 million on the imported steel and steel products. East Africa spends 2.5 billion on steel products if you include automobiles, which consume a lot of steel. Yes, we have 12 factories recycling scrap metal. This scrap steel helps us to get Mtayimbwa steel bars for low-strength buildings. The products of recycled steel cannot, however, be used for high-strength structures such as dams, the standard gauge railway, etc. Hence, the endless hemorrhage. Why should this be tolerated? Why should this be happening in Africa 65 years after Ghana's independence? This crime of donating Africa's resources at a pittance to clever outsiders applies to copper, cobalt, tin, coltan, etc. Any wonder that African youth do not have jobs and must go for semi-slave jobs abroad. Those jobs are donated by African planners to the outsiders. This is the war I've been fighting here in Uganda for the last almost 62 years. I thank those elements in the NRM that seriously support this position. I appeal to all the others to support these liberation efforts. It's a matter of survival and crucial for our prosperity. The second question I want to pose again is the political class in Africa determined to build a Latin America in Africa or a United States of Africa in Africa? This question should have been answered at independence. Mwalimu Nyerere, Nkrumah, Modibo Keita, Sékou Touré, and maybe Lumumba was killed too early, raised this question and tried to answer it in a correct way. Their voices were, however, smothered by the collaborators, and instead the nebulous OAU was created. In the last 500 years, two good laboratories have emerged on the global stage. Two laboratories have emerged on the global stage: Latin America and the North American continent. European populations expanded into the two continents of the Americas that were inhabited by Indians of the West. The European populations came from Spain and Portugal to take over Latin America, and from the UK to take over North America. After 500 years, there is great prosperity in North America and misery and poverty in Latin America. Yet in terms of natural resources, water, forests, agricultural land, minerals, etc., Latin America may be richer than North America. What then accounts for the difference? The difference partly emerged from the political economic organization of the two continents. Latin America is excessively fragmented politically and economically, comprised of 12 countries, and if you include the Caribbean, the total number of countries rises to 25. The North American continent, on the other hand, is comprised of only 3 countries: Mexico, the USA, and Canada. The USA is a 3 million square miles unit with a population of 332 million people. It is that big market that stimulated the growth of the USA economy. It is not easy to be a successful business person in Honduras, population 10 million. El Salvador, population 6 million. Panama, population 4 million, etc., etc., on account of the smaller populations. In Latin America, they never even attempted to form a common market like the one of Europe. A common market, however, would not be free of problems of discordance. You have seen Britain walking out of that body, and we have seen the tensions with Hungary, Serbia, etc. Hence, the best formula, if possible, so as to create a framework for guaranteeing prosperity of people is the USA formula, which entails both political and economic integration. Here in Africa, it points to the creation of the political federations, like the ones of East Africa. Such a federation would not only guarantee the prosperity of the people through a big market, it would also guarantee offtake for producers of goods and services, but it would also ensure strategic security of people. Nobody could dare to threaten their security. They would ensure their four-dimensional strategic security on land, in the air, at sea, and in space. It would also deal with the problem of the suppressed fraternity of the African peoples. The 54 countries of Africa created by colonialism do not pay the slightest attention to the four linguistic groups of Africa. The four are the Niger-Congo, the Nilo-Saharan, the Afro-Asiatic, and the Khoisan. These are the four clusters of nations based on language. Obviously, the 54 countries do not pay attention to this. Hence, here in East Africa, you find the interacustrian Bantus of this area are scattered in Uganda, Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, and Kenya. Yet these are peoples whose dialects are mutually intelligible. Some months ago, at Munyonyo, I found a group of young people seated. When I engaged them, I found they were Kenyans. Of course, it is not easy to know who is a Kenyan and who is a Ugandan by looking at them. You have to ask them. I then asked one of them, a girl, what her name was. Her answer was Kwambuka. Her name was Kwambuka. Kwambuka. Where do you come from? Was my next question. Her answer, Kisii. Kisii in Kenya, the land of His Excellency, Dr. Ruto. Then my next question was, what does Kwambuka mean in Kisii? I asked the young lady. The answer, it means crossing a river or a valley. The young lady answered. That is exactly what it means in the Runyakitara dialects. You can't believe it. It is not only the interacustrian Bantu that are fragmented in these countries. How about our Luos in South Sudan, Congo, Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Tanzania? The Kalenjin, Uganda, South Sudan, and Kenya. And the Ateker, South Sudan, Congo, Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Tanzania. When you talk of the Luo, you are talking of the Alurs, Achoris, Langis, Japadola, Luos, Anuak in Ethiopia, Kumam. When you talk of the Kalenjin, you are talking of the Sabine, Pokot, Nandis, Kipsigis, etc. When you talk of the Ateke, you are talking of the Kakwaz, the Bari, the Topotha, the Turkana, the Karamojong, the Itoset, etc. Where do the Maasai belong? Are they Ateker or Kalenjin? Help the author, please. However, I know that they are certainly Nairo-Hamitic. In the case of East Africa, we have the added value, added bonus in the form of the fraternity of the Swahili language speakers. It has therefore been long, ever since the NRM and its precursors started supporting the struggle for the realization of the dream of the East African Federation. If we had achieved that by 1963, as the elders had intended, this part of the world would be very far. Some of the political elite let down Africa in 1963 by frustrating that effort. If that federation had been launched in 1963, you can be sure that Idi Amin would never have taken power in Uganda. There would have been no genocide in Rwanda or the killings in Burundi. Congo would have stabilized long ago. The problems of South Sudan would have been solved much earlier, and the problem of Somalia may not have turned out the way it did. Even today, the sort of problems we are facing would be easily solved. Take the problem, and I'm glad His Excellency Ruto spoke on this. Take the problem of high food prices, for instance. A few years ago, Uganda produced 5 million tons of maize. Uganda consumed only 1 million tons because Ugandans have other foods. It is only institutions and the animal feed manufacturers that use maize. There was therefore a surplus of 4 million tons, which had no market in East Africa on account of the non-tariff barriers, protectionism. The prices collapsed, and the farmers in Uganda walked away from growing maize. Only now to be told that there is a big demand for maize, and even people are dying. The store of maize is the same as the store of milk, sugar, rice. Some Ugandans wanted me to stop Tanzanian rice. Please, I will not do that. If the Tanzanians are growing rice more cheaply, let them grow it and you buy from them. And if you want, you can apply and you shift and go and ask the Tanzanian government to allow you to do rice in Tanzania. In my opinion, East Africans will be better off if the most efficient East African producers are encouraged so that the whole of the region benefits. Recently, I was told of some attempts to block rice from Tanzania in order to protect the inefficient rice growers of Uganda. I could not accept such blindness. Why? First of all, punish Ugandans to consume expensive rice while Tanzanian brothers can produce cheaper rice. The other blindness is that you should remember that if you block Tanzanian rice, Tanzania will also block something else from Uganda. Where then is the future of prosperity for our region? Why block East African products and open our markets for subsidized goods from Europe, China, Brazil, etc.? Those should be the ones to be blocked because they are unfairly selling in our market. Foreign government subsidized goods versus our unsubsidized goods. If you allow subsidized Brazilian products to kill the market for Uganda's sugar in East Africa, what return benefit will East Africa get from Brazil? What does Brazil give you in return? East Africa is a potential superpower of the League of India or China. If we integrate economically and politically, assisted fortunately by the Swahili language, which is part of the heritage of this area. If our economics professors wake up and see the hemorrhage the NRM revolutionaries have been seeing ever since the 1960s on account of only producing raw materials, and the political class determines not to build a Latin America in Africa, but instead build a United States of Africa in Africa, a very prosperous and secure future for Africa would be ensured. In spite of the missed opportunities in the East African region, and in spite of so many avoidable mistakes that were committed by different actors, Uganda finally stabilized and started not only growing, but also undergoing socio-economic transformation ever since 1986. The small independence enclave colonial economy of 1962, of the 3 C's and 3 T's, had by 1986 shrunk by 25%. The 3 C's were coffee, cotton, and copper. And the 3 T's were tobacco, tea, and tourism. By 1986, all the 3 C's had disappeared except coffee, that was still limping on. All the 3 T's had disappeared except tobacco, which was still limping on. Having lost 24 years, because you are talking of 60 years, actually you should be talking of 36 years. Because 24 of the 60 years were lost. Having lost 24 years of the 60 years, the NRM, our movement, had fortunately had many years of clarifying our ideological, philosophical, and strategic position on almost all issues of society and economy. We had already distilled our 4 principles of patriotism, Pan-Africanism, socio-economic transformation, and democracy. To realize the 4 principles, we put forward the 10 points program, out of which point number 5 was the one guiding us to build an integrated, independent, and self-sustaining national economy that rejected the slave role of confining ourselves to producing raw materials. The principle of patriotism struck a blow at the politics of identity, sectarianism of religion and tribes, and pushed forward the politics of legitimate interests of the people. That is why, ever since 1989, the NRM always won all elections by absolute majority in both popular votes and the electoral colleges on the first round. We have never had a second round here. And I congratulate His Excellency Ruto for winning on the first round. In the 1962 independence elections, no party could win by absolute majority because they had fragmented the electorate in sectarian groups that could never attract broad support. Guided by our principle of Pan-Africanism, when we won power, we worked with Mzee Hassan Mwinyi, Mzee Benjamin Mkapa, Mzee Daniel Arap Moi, supported by Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, who was still alive at that time, to revive the East African community, which was re-inaugurated on the 30th of November, 1999. Guided by the same principles, we stood with the African brothers in South Africa, Namibia, South Sudan, Rwanda, Burundi, Somalia, etc. It is this principle that educates us not to aim at building a Latin America in Africa, but building a United States of Africa in Africa to ensure the prosperity of our people and the strategic security of Africa. Our belief in patriotism and Pan-Africanism enabled us to build a strong national army for the first time since the collapse of the Batrese Empire around the year 1500 AD. This is partly on account of the ideology of anti-sectarianism. We do not look at soldiers with sectarian lenses, but with soldiership and ideological lenses for patriotism. That is how we were able to build an army that could go for so long and anywhere for either no pay or low pay. This strong army has been always backed by a vast structure of popular support in the form of the RCs, resistance councils, diluted by the politicians to LOCs. They didn't like resistance. They changed it to that they are local. I also kept quiet. This peace architecture has enabled the economy to recover and thrive. By the end of last financial year, the size of the economy was $45 billion, having grown from $1.5 billion in 1986. The economy had therefore expanded 30 times since 1986, and we had entered the lower end of the middle income status with a per capita GDP of 1,046. This was in spite of the population growing from 14 million in 1986 to 43 million now. We could have achieved more if it was not for the obstructions we normally get from careerist politicians and administrators or neo-colonial agents. One of the big mistakes has been the refusal by the careerist political administrative class to transform the pre-capitalist traditional society into a food secure and commercially active class with a chibaro, a sabu, looking for the most remunerative enterprises compared to the family land size and generally getting involved in the money economy by the whole society. This is in spite of the guidance we have been giving the country ever since 1995, when I made a countrywide tour giving facts of what can be done after I had carried out successful transformation in the cattle corridor. On account of this negligence by the political and administrative classes, by 2013, the homesteads that were still in the subsistence sector were 68%, having been 96% in 1969. That is when I involved the army in the form of OW, Operation Wealth Creation. The figures show that there has been a decline in the homesteads that still work for the stomach. With the parish development model and the Myoga, not forgetting the bigger industrialization and modernization programs, we are sure to finally involve all the homesteads in the money economy. We have sent money to the parish circles and to the Myoga. This is going to unleash massive production of food, beverages, other raw materials that must be processed by factories. Moreover, agriculture will now be firmly anchored on irrigation. Therefore, the erraticness of production in agriculture is over. This in turn means the damage to the water bodies must stop because we need the water for irrigation. Out of the 60 million acres of Uganda, 8.9 million are covered by water bodies and wetlands. And assuming we have forests covering 30% of the country, that would leave us 15.3 million acres for agriculture. If 10 million acres were used for intensive agriculture of the 4 acres model, that would give us 2.5 million small farms. In the Rwengaju area, our small-scale farmers using only 1 acre are employing 15 people per farm. Using this conservative figure, the 2.5 million small farms would employ 37.5 million people. Assuming the other 5 million acres were for medium-scale farming, using farms of 100 acres each, we should have 50,000 farms. These, in addition to the intensive agricultural activities of the small farms, would use extensive agriculture to produce maize, sugarcane, cotton, tea, tobacco, etc., products that only make economic sense when they are produced on a large scale. These would create their own jobs. All this is just in agriculture. How about industry, manufacturing? How about services? How about ICT? The problem, therefore, is not jobs. The problem is the neo-colonial thinking that is always off the point and not able to understand the strong potential of Africa. Now that we have solved the problem of electricity, we are moving full steam on all the opportunities of the value addition in agro-processing, fruit processing, animal feeds for maize, cassava flour and starch, banana flour and starch, ethanol from different sources, etc., paper from forest products, sealing boards from forest products, vertically integrated steel industry, food processing of copper, fertilizer industry from our phosphates, the pathogenic economy of vaccines and pharmaceuticals, and the diagnostics and sanitizers, and the knowledge industry of automobiles and electronics, as you saw here, these which are already being made here. With our East African brothers and sisters, the sky is the limit. Recently, I'm about to finish Mnange miaka enkaga. 60 years, please, muzikirize, allow me. Munikubali miaka 60, sio kitu rahisi. Wacha nitoa maneno yote. Recently, there was yet another manifestation of imperialistic arrogance and hegemonism by elements in the European Parliament, whereby they decreed from Brussels that East African crude pipeline should not be constructed until those arrogant actors permit us to do so. Parasitic elements from that part of the world have been causing problems for Africa and the world for the last 500 years. It all started with 1453 AD, when the Turkish Ottomans captured Constantinople and blocked the land route for Europe to the east for trade in silk, spices, etc. The Europeans, led by Portugal, legitimately started looking for an alternative sea route to the east to outflank the blockade, partly due to our internal weaknesses caused by the bankrupt tribal chiefs. What started as a search for alternative route to the east soon became a mega slave trading phenomenon: colonialism, exploitation, looting, and genocide in Africa, Asia, and the Americas. By 1900, the whole of Africa had been colonized except for Ethiopia. However, soon the Africans and other colonized peoples reorganized and launched a massive anti-colonial movement in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the struggle for equal rights by the black nation in the USA. The African National Congress was founded in South Africa in 1912. By 1994, the arrogant imperialists were defeated in South Africa. Earlier on, the colonized peoples had achieved victories in Indonesia, India, Indochina, Mozambique, Kenya, Algeria, Angola, Guinea-Bissau, Zimbabwe, Namibia, and the whole of Africa, either through armed struggle or through peaceful mass struggle. 1994, with the liberation of South Africa, should have marked the end of imperialist arrogance and meddling in the affairs of their former victims. However, some elements are incorrigible, as you can see from this resolution. The patriotic forces in the world are, however, much stronger, and the patriotic forces in Uganda are much stronger and very capable in all dimensions. The imperialists use the mistakes and the weakness of Africa. Otherwise, Africa is invincible, as was shown by the victories in Mozambique, Angola, and Zimbabwe. East Africans, therefore, should not worry about those arrogant people, that those arrogant people can stop the oil project in East Africa. If any actor tries to delay our project, we shall decisively deal with that betrayal according to the relevant laws. We shall develop all the aspects of the project with willing partners. Initially, I was not interested in the pipeline. I was only interested in the refinery to produce petrol, diesel, aviation fuel for East African market. It is Total who insisted, even when Uganda had to give away US dollars 20.7 per barrel to use the pipeline. In the end, we support the pipeline because it contributes something modest to our Tanzanian sisters and brothers who, under Mwalimu's leadership, contributed so much to Africa, including Uganda, in the anti-colonialism effort. Besides, the pipeline corridor provided by the Tanzanian government will bring to us gas from Tanzania and Mozambique, because our gas resources are not that big. We need gas for fertilizer manufacture, to produce chemicals, etc. Therefore, down with the imperialist parasitic measures. However, Africa should know that even during the anti-colonial struggle, we had progressive whites that were on our side. Lord Fenner Brockway, Sir Dingo Foot, Professor George Shepard, etc. worked with Mzee Msazi in our anti-colonial struggle. Even today, there are progressive forces in Western Europe who can work for the common good of humanity, who are not part of white chauvinism. We shall seek them out. Most importantly, the oil project and other projects are unstoppable. The NRM has always had a correct philosophical, ideological, and strategic grasp of all issues. Nothing can derail us, in spite of the good movement in the world to curb the emissions of the greenhouse gases and move away from oil as fuel for cars. Our oil will remain valuable. We shall still need the oil for textiles like the shirt I normally put on. It is 65% polyester, which is from oil. We need hydrocarbons for fertilizer, nitrogen, for plastics, for tar, for our roads. As you saw, we are moving on the electric vehicles, electric pickups, using hydrogen for steel manufacture, etc. However, our oil will remain useful for other non-polluting purposes. All living things have carbon in them. Carbon is not a problem. The problem has been greed of foreigners who jump from this to that looking for money without careful and honest study. Before the coming of foreigners, Africa was using solar energy, wind energy, etc. for drying things, processing millet, and using carbon for blacksmithing in a controlled way. With the more understanding of natural laws, science, if we would do away with greed, all these products can be used safely and sustainably. When oil will no longer be needed for driving cars, it will serve us longer for use for other purposes. I thank everybody. In particular, I thank their excellencies, His Excellency Ndayishimiye, President of Burundi and Chairman of the East African Community, His Excellency Salva Kiir Mayardit, President of South Sudan, His Excellency Sheikh Mohamud, President of the Republic of Somalia, His Excellency William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency Dr. Ali Mwinyi, President of Zanzibar, and the Chairman of the Revolutionary Council representing the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, His Excellency Ebua Jean-Pierre, Vice Prime Minister and Minister of Public Service of DRC, and His Excellency Professor Manasi Nshuti, Minister of State for East African Affairs, representing the Republic of Rwanda, and Dr. Peter Mathuku, Secretary General of the East African Community, and Honorable Sadio Kamara, Minister of Defense of the Republic of Mali, for honoring us by positively responding to my invitation to be with us on this occasion. This is part of Undugu. Thank you so much. Mbasaside, have you survived the speech? Muchariwo katonda yebazigo oba muonye speech eno. Asante sana kama kuvumilia hii hotuba ndefu kiasi hiki. 30 pages. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Indeed, it's worth...
Well, there you have it, 78-year-old Yoweri Museveni, the president of Uganda there, with a pretty long speech, that he also had to comment on at the end, and ask if the people who were present at the Kololo ground had survived the speech. Anyway.
Definitely. I mean, you need to have survived the speech. Yoweri Museveni said a lot of things on that speech there. He talked about some of the achievements he has made over the years. And I think he's aware of the criticisms of his government. And then he highlighted what he has done. And I noticed that the blame, because at the beginning he asked one question. He said, do we have African economics? Professors of economics in the continent. And then he put the blame and he said agents of foreign interests are frustrating Africa's development. I wonder, when is the blame game going to end? I mean, you're a leader, you're the one in charge, you're the executive officer. And then he's asking, do we have professors of economics in the African continent?
Well, I mean, so it makes you wonder, who has been there for the last 30 years, and like I would always say, even when we had guests, I said that I would give Yoweri Museveni credit for the things that he's done, the things that he's gotten right. He's always been passionate about self-sufficiency for Uganda, and it was one of the things that he also spoke about now. He spoke about how much textile and automobiles and, the different industries that are making trillions of dollars or hundreds of billions of dollars every year across the world. But this is what Africa is getting, a mega 5% or even less than 10%, a lot of times. Yeah. So it's something that he's always been passionate about, and I believe that it's stuff that he's still trying to improve upon with Uganda. But I mean, you've been there for 30 years, so, there should be a report card that says, this is where we were at this point, but now we are the largest with regards this, agricultural product or this exporting of this thing, even if it's just around East Africa, or across the African continent or across the world, So a little bit of it still sounds like he is just getting into office, and these are still his plans.
And he has been there since 1986.
Yeah.
Over time, African governments, we complain of the colonialism, and then that's the reason why we got independence. Taking Uganda, for example, one of the major issues, which I highlighted earlier on, was the fact that they felt exploited by this colonialism. I mean, you have resources and you cannot control it.
Yeah.
Now we have control of the resources. We can do with it. What have we done with it? What has the governance done to control these resources and make an impact on the people? I like the fact that he mentioned that our products, when we sell it outside, we should name it. Probably we'll have a product called Osarogie and the rest. Yeah, that's a good thing. But what about the stability of the country? What has he done to it? You talk about imports. This is governance. This is what we're talking about. You're the one in control of all these things. You ask for professor of economics. The professor of economics are under you. So even if they have the knowledge of what to do, the implementation still falls on your table.
Well, I'm no expert, but I understand when they make those statements, and I'm not disagreeing with you. Yeah. Yes, there's still a lot of ways that they have failed, and not just Museveni now. Presidents leaders across the African continent. There's a lot of things that they could have done better. Yeah. But it doesn't take away the fact that there is still a presence of the foreign influence that has left.
And who has allowed this foreign influence? If you go back to colonialism, the reason why, they came and they were looking at countries. They came and they took over the country. But there was also an alliance between the traditional rulers. So who allowed these influences?
So there is that, but there's also the part where a lot of these things happen not necessarily because you have a choice. Yeah. Anyway,
there's always a choice.
No, not really.
Yeah.
There are countries that have been pushed to the edge and are forced to accept loans from the IMF.
True.
These loans put you in a position that you really cannot argue. There's a lot of angles to this, but yes, they have a lot of work to do. Congratulations to Uganda. Of course, would have to leave it here, and of course, in the course of the day, we'll be giving you more feed and more clips from Uganda as they celebrate 60 years of independence. Thank you so much for staying with us in the time that we've been covering this, and we celebrate with our Ugandan brothers and sisters from here at News Central TV.
Definitely, celebrations are still ongoing in Uganda, and over here at News Central TV, we're still celebrating the beauty of Uganda. As I said earlier on, Uganda was once known as the Pearl of Africa. Africa is blessed with so many natural resources. Talk about gold, talk about textiles, automobiles. Africa has it, and Africa should be able to develop on these resources that it has. Unfortunately, this live broadcast will take a break right now while we will continue to give you live updates of the Uganda Fun Fair and Independence Day celebration at the Kololo grounds in Uganda. It's been a wonderful, I wouldn't say 2 hours packed, but it's been a nice broadcast so far, so good. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for staying with us. We'll be back here again. I'll be back here again tomorrow morning on Breakfast Central. But of course, News Central TV continues all for the rest of today. And as much as we can bring you what's going on in Uganda, we will. But of course, there's so much more interesting programming coming your way.
Definitely. Rita Omodia.
And I am Osarogie Ogbonmwan.
Bye.